Hello, this is the first tutorial I'm gonna try, and I hope it's not too dull. I'm just gonna keep them short and basically concentrate on one thing, and in this case, I'm going to show you some quick and dirty tricks for doing camera work and stuff like that, and also a little bit about post-processing and the Unity recorder, which is not a big deal. So this is the new set. Now I had to turn down all the lights because they were up at 200 intensity. So I had to turn them all down, and then I think it looks close to what you normally have. I don't know for sure. Um, but that's not what I was doing. So anyway, this looks fairly good. So the camera, when you start a project, of course you get the main camera, which is always the same. One handy dandy trick, and you'll see that the main camera is just off in Wonderland here at 000 and -10 for some reason. Um, the easy way to get cameras to show what you want them to show is to select the camera and then go up here to Game Object, Align with View. And once you click that, you'll notice that the main camera changes to the current view. Also, when you go to a different camera, say if I create another camera, um, like this one is very outside and showing all the stuff you don't want anybody to see. But if I wanted to go there in the scene view, you can also do the kind of corollary to the other one, which is align view to selected, which will take you to the same position as the current camera. So it's a good way to jump around to various cameras, and then you just kind of move back and forth with your mouse wheel, and you can play with the camera position and all the characteristics of the cameras. But I'll just delete that one for now. So now I will use that same functionality to go back and go back to where I was. So that's real quick. That's nice. It's better than navigating around, using the mouse and all that stuff. Now the main thing for cameras to make them, pretty and stuff like that, you can use your field of view and stuff like that here to adjust them. If you're too far away, you're going to get the weird, wide angle effects. So you might want to adjust that and then actually just move the camera in and out, depending on your lens kind of effects. The other thing you turn on is physical camera, which I don't use a lot, but it gives you access to a ton of stuff, and your ISO settings, and just junk which I don't use. I know what they all are, but I generally don't use them. So I'll just leave that off, and if you want to explore that, please feel free. The other aspect here is the clipping plane, which doesn't come into account or into effect too much, but you can set this down to 0.1, so anything coming really near the camera won't clip through the camera, and you'll see the inside of somebody's head and that kind of stuff. The far plane is good when you have an enormous outdoor set like the helicopter thing. This far plane was actually set to like 55,000, because otherwise you won't see the edge of the environment. It'll just clip off, and it'll look kind of funny. If you have mountains in the background, it'll just clip out, and you won't see the actual mountains. But if you change this up to a high number, you will see the mountains. Now that is the reason for all of that, of course, is to optimize games so that when you're in real time in a game, it's not trying to render things that are too far away to see. And it's just a performance thing. But in making little videos, I just kind of ignore all the performance stuff, because the recorder, as you will see, just it renders. It doesn't actually just show a real-time image. Anyway, so that's the camera. You poke around with that. I'm sure you're familiar with it anyway. But the most important thing about cameras is the post-processing stuff you can do. And a lot of this you can do after the fact in After Effects, and it's kind of a balance. I don't use After Effects. I tend to do everything in camera. Um, but it's called post post processing. So this is all available in the package manager. So you go to the package manager, you select Unity Registry. These are all free. And then you just type in post here and you'll get the post processing package, and then you install it, which is normally there. Same for the recorder, which I will just mention later. So we want to add a component to the camera, and a lot of effects things require that you add their special camera, like the overcloud thing that I use for the helicopter thing. If you don't add the camera, you don't see the clouds and stuff, so you have to be a little aware of that. You can't just drag some things into the hierarchy and expect them to show up unless the camera is ready to show those things. So first thing you got to do is add a post-processing layer. And lately, I mean, because I don't care about quality, or I should say performance that much when I'm doing a recording, you could turn all this aliasing stuff to whatever you think looks best. I usually just put fast approximate on, and it seems to work. And the other thing is the layer, and you're not supposed to use everything, but I do. So you just don't have to worry about everything showing up or everything being processed. And that's all I ever do here. You can futz around with these, but why bother? They don't really... I don't know that, like this, I'm not quite sure. I don't fool around. If it works to how I want it to work, then I don't fool around. So for post-process layer, you add it, and then you add the layer everything, and then you change it to FXAA for post-processing. Now, to make it actually function, because you can see there's no change here, and for all of the effects, you have to add the volume. And the volume you can make global, which means that it affects all subsequent cameras, I believe. And I don't play with the weight, I don't play with the priority. I just create a new profile, which always named the same as the camera you're working on, which you can clone later on so that you can change the one camera to do certain things and the other camera to show other things. And at this point, we're all set here. We can just add an effect. Unity depth of field is a good one, because if you have a fixed camera and it only applies to the one camera, like if you have a new set with one guy behind it and you want to set his depth of field so that the background is blurred out. I noticed in the box demo that you had an actual blurred out image in the background. Well, with depth of field, you don't have to do that. You just set it to focus on the guy that's you want to focus on, and the background you can make various other adjustments. So I've added it here. It always comes in checked, but then you have to turn the sub menus on, or the sub properties. And I usually turn on these three, and you can then putz around with them. Obviously, you can see the effect down at the bottom here. I'll put this up here so it's a little bigger. So now you can see the effect of the focus distance. I've set it probably close, so that if there was a character here, you'd see them in focus and the background would be out of focus. And then the aperture, again, you can play with, you get more or less. It just behaves like a real camera. So with those adjustments, you can usually get it to the point where you want it to look the best. I'll just turn that off for now. You can also, I believe, turn all these off programmatically. I'm not quite sure. Anyway, so we'll add another effect. One of the most fun ones, and one everybody uses and goes crazy for, is bloom, which I usually just set these two. The other ones, I'm not sure. Anamorphic might be something you could use. But anyway, so you could set the intensity. So now you can see things are starting to glow, and a little bit is good. because it gives this brightness effect, and you can play with the threshold so that only certain brightnesses of the materials trigger. As you can see down here, these ones I made a little bit brighter, so they trigger a little bit of bloom, but the other ones do not. Like these ones up here, I didn't brighten them at all, so they don't show up as obviously, which you can just change. No. If I go back to scene view, select that object, and the first time you select it, you'll probably get something else, so you want to click it twice until you get the actual thing. And then we've got our ceiling glow, which is these lines, I believe. And if I go in and change the emission and make it brighter, there, that's glowing. And this is all overdone, so I won't belabor it here, but obviously this is just how you do it. Now these little lights, that's the ceiling spot glow, so you can just turn that up and then they'll start to glow as well. But that's overdone, so whatever. So that's cool. Now if you want to go back and we can just, keep adding things here until you've gone crazy. What's the fun one? Chromatic aberration? I don't know. Anyway, there's all of these ones. Ambient occlusion is fairly important because it gives a better feeling of depth to the thing you're shooting through the camera. So you'll see here if I go back to game, if I go mode and intensity, I usually change this one to scalable. Now that it can do weird things, especially in VR. It's just no good at all because it'll create these weird shadow things. But as you can see here, if you look carefully, you can see the shadows happen. And using it just moderately gives everything a more solid feeling of depth. It may not be realistic, I don't know, but it certainly gives everything a more 3D feel. So it's well worth using that. And again, you can play with all of these other things if you want, but I don't. Color grading is exactly what you think it would be. You can play with all these things. Contrast, sometimes I bump just because it looks a little better. I like saturated colors and stuff like that too, so you could fool around with that. It gets, if you want to go retro, nice. But otherwise, you don't move them too much, you don't go crazy. So and then there's all kinds of other junk in here, of course, and it's very adaptable. And you can play with all of these other ones. Motion blur, when the helicopter blades are spinning, I just turn that on so you get that effect, that nice effect. And I don't use lens distortion. I don't use auto exposure much. I use vignettes sometimes, like for a horror video. If you have that kind of thing going on, you could do that. Grain, just what you think it is. Screen space reflections, not really sure about that one. Anyway, chromatic aberration is nice if you want to be a J.J. Abrams kind of guy with Star Trek. There's a lot, I don't know. I don't usually use that, but I know you can. So if you go, weird, you can do that. This is not, okay, that must be built into Bloom. The anamorphic stuff. Yeah. So you play with the anamorphic. There's another tool that's really great, is called Beautify. I think it's up to Beautify 3 in the asset store now. And it's pretty phenomenal. Anyway, I'm going to stop here because it's getting kind of long. So I apologize for that, but I hope it helped. And we'll see ya.